Imagine yourself as a fish in a pond, living your two-dimensional life. You're certainly oblivious to the three-dimensional world above you. One day, you're plucked from your world. You would then experience a completely new dimension, the world of up. This is a reality you couldn't even fathom before. To your perspective, you would see aliens walking around. This is a realm where beings breathe without water, and they move without fins. Theoretical physicist Michio Kaku gives us this fascinating analogy. It's a little disconcerting, isn't it? This idea that there could be an entire universe beyond our perception. Well, as Professor Kaku suggested, we might just be like one of those fish. In physics, hyperspace refers to a space of higher dimensions. We're familiar with the three spatial dimensions: length, width, and height. But what if there's more dimensions than we can perceive? Extra dimensions, if you will, existing just outside our perception, yet still very much a part of the cosmos. We're going to journey beyond these hypothetical realms, a reality of the unknown, the unseen, and the unexperienced. Our journey begins in the late 19th century. A brilliant mathematician, Hermann Minkowski, was one of the many scholars striving to understand the intricate fabric of the universe. The stage had been set by the revolutionary work of physicists like James Clerk Maxwell. His equations of electromagnetism hinted at an intricate dance between the spatial dimensions and an entity as pervasive and fundamental: time. The pivotal piece of the puzzle fell into place with the groundbreaking work of a former student of Minkowski's. It's none other than Albert Einstein. In 1905, Einstein published his special theory of relativity. Its radical proposition says that space and time were not independent, but instead interwoven into a singular space-time fabric. It was Einstein's bold thinking that inspired Minkowski. As a mathematician, he sought a geometric understanding of Einstein's theory, a way to visualize the new space-time reality. His profound insight was the concept of a four-dimensional space-time continuum, where now time serves as the fourth dimension, alongside the three spatial dimensions we're familiar with. But that's not the whole picture. The laws of physics as we understand them seem to need more room than just four dimensions. In one way, they fit together nicely, but not perfectly. It's not until we move into hyperspace and begin the search for these higher dimensions.
When you go to this larger pond, this pond of hyperspace, then all the laws of physics just fit together like a jigsaw puzzle.
String theory, a fundamental theory aiming to unify quantum mechanics and general relativity, postulated that our universe is composed of tiny vibrating strings existing in 10 dimensions. These strings, each vibrating at its own unique frequency, give rise to the diverse particles and forces we observe in our universe. However, in the 90s, scientists added a twist to the tale. Physicist Edward Witten revolutionized the field by introducing an 11th dimension. It proposed that other higher dimensional objects called branes could exist and vibrate in this hyperspace. Under this perspective, our universe itself could be a gigantic membrane, vibrating in this higher dimensional space. And so our understanding of the universe evolved once more. These extra dimensions might not be small or hidden. They could be vast and possibly infinite. Like flies that are trapped on a sticky paper, we human beings are stuck in our universe, unable to perceive or interact with these higher dimensions. But if we look at one specific force in the universe, it might explain to us something. You see, there are forces around us that we often take for granted, one of which is gravity. Despite being a fundamental force, gravity is surprisingly weak. Think about it. When you decide to get up and go to the bathroom, you effortlessly overcome the gravitational pull of the entire Earth. It could be that gravity seeps across these dimensional branes, which in turn makes a great explanation for why gravity force is so weak in our universe. Could this truly be the case?
We can actually perhaps detect experimentally the presence of alternate universes. We can detect dark matter-like objects from other universes hovering just above our universe. This is not just science fiction.
Our exploration into hyperspace naturally leads us to an even more mind-bending concept: the possibility of multiple dimensions of time. John William Dunn, an Irish engineer and philosopher, produced a distinct body of work that continues to have a profound impact in scientific and philosophical discourse. His conceptualization of time didn't stop at a singular linear dimension. You see, in the realm of general relativity, space and time meld together into a block space-time. Dunn suggested we need this additional dimension to simply measure our progression along our individual timelines. For example, if a person stays inside a supermassive black hole, how would you know that he is experiencing a different passage of time as opposed to ours?
Are there multiple temporal dimensions? My belief is that we may be looking at something that has access to either 4 or 6 additional dimensions. You know what they mean in physical reality.
Consequently, this proposal necessitates a novel tier of consciousness, which functions within this secondary time dimension. But the plot thickens, because the same reasoning applies to this new level. We need a third dimension of time, and a fourth, a fifth, and eventually spiraling into an infinite regress, an infinite hierarchy of time dimensions, each inhabited by corresponding levels of consciousness. And at the very end, Dunn envisioned something called a superlative general observer, existing in eternity.
Multiple temporal dimensions would be a decisive game changer in terms of changing everything that we know about the world.
If the prospect of multiple timelines feels overwhelming for you, let's recalibrate our perspective. With the power of advanced computation at my disposal, we'll now shift our gaze to a concept that's a tad more tangible, a little more grounded. The thought experiment known as the twin paradox. Imagine two twins, perfectly identical in every way. Let's call them Ace and Bob. Ace, the adventurous one, takes off into space in a high-speed spaceship, while Bob remains on Earth. When the spacefaring twin returns, he is significantly younger than the Earthbound twin. This is the basic idea of the twin paradox, a consequence of Einstein's theory of relativity. But let's add another layer to this thought exercise. Suppose these twins share not only identical genetics, but also identical fates. This means that whatever genetic ailment befalls Bob will also affect Ace, given enough time. Now, since Bob has aged more, he experiences this ailment first. Once they reunite, he can tell his younger twin about it. For instance, when Bob was 53 years old, he developed colon cancer, leading him to foretell Ace that he would also face the same cancer at 53, and perhaps some other genetic diseases throughout his timeline so far. So Bob, having experienced more time, can offer insights to his younger brother about what lies ahead in their identical fate. In this scenario, we've established a system where the normal flow of time for Bob, who aged normally, is essentially a higher temporal dimension compared to the time experienced by Ace. This takes the idea of the twin paradox and adds an extra layer of complexity, quite literally an additional dimension. It makes us reconsider ingrained beliefs about time, about causality, and about the very nature of our existence. Now, to aid us in the next level of this thought exercise, we'll be using a more general terminology. Instead of Ace and Bob, we'll speak of dimensions that we label as level alpha and beta. But it just doesn't stop here. We'll also expand these to encompass even higher dimensions. A little bit of setup before we proceed to these hypothetical higher dimensions. Although we experience a tangible 3D existence around us, we see a 2D representation of our environment through our eyes, which our brains then interpret to create a sensation of depth. This ultimately gives us a perception of a 3D world built from the flat two-dimensional input we receive. A similar concept has been proposed by cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman.
Whatever reality is, you don't see it. You see a user interface. There's this whole new world beyond space-time that is making explicit symmetries that are true of the data that cannot be seen in space-time.
If we extend this thought experiment to hypothetical higher dimensional beings, say those existing in the fourth dimension, these entities would likely capture a 3D snapshot of their surroundings. It might look like a 3D hologram inside their brains, which would then be processed to construct a perception of the 4D world around them. But this is not just about raw perception. With a higher dimension comes an expanded perspective, which opens doors to a deeper comprehension of reality. A higher level being might have an all-encompassing view of our 3D world and perceive time as another navigable dimension. And just like in our twin analogy, Bob, who is in a higher level of understanding of Ace's timeline, is like having a bird's-eye view of the whole maze so far. They can quote-unquote see the future of lower-level beings and perhaps guide them towards specific outcomes. But it's not because they have mystical powers, it's more about being able to see the full view of the landscape of time, suggesting a full view of the events that lies ahead. So my question now, are you ready to ascend to these higher framework of thinking? Diving deeper into the concept of these multiple time, let's explore what reality might be like for a being in the beta dimension. This beta entity perceives time quite differently from how the alpha being does, simply because beta has experienced the previous time. Imagining beta existence is like watching a movie on DVD or Netflix. You see, movies that you watch in cinema, they're being played at roughly 24 frames a second, scene by scene, in a linear time. You cannot fast forward or skip any part. However, it's not the case with the beta entity. They can fast forward or rewind to specific scenes of their life, ones that they find enjoyable. They can relive the moments, different events, moving in a non-linear progression through their timeline. End, beginning, and middle. Or in any order for that matter. I hope this reminds you of something. The Interstellar's Tesseract scene. It's a perfect example of the beta dimension.
Cooper, within the multidimensional construct of the Tesseract, has the ability to access any point in time within a specific location, his daughter's bedroom. He's not merely watching these moments unfold linearly like an alpha entity, he's actively able to jump around within the timeline of the room's history. In fact, he can choose any specific event that he like, in which order and how many times.
Coming back to our point, this beta dimension is a massive leap from the linear time perception of hypothetical alpha beings like us. We are moving through reality, at one Planck time at a time. Since we're talking about a deeper understanding of reality, what does it take to really see the bigger picture? Perhaps more than just the ability of beta to fast forward through time and relive different moments. For that, we need to step one dimension higher, to a dimension we would call gamma. Imagine a world where every moment of existence, every decision, every twist and turn of your life is laid bare before you. You're no longer inside the simulation, no longer merely interacting with it. Instead, you're an outsider looking in, and you hold the entire chronology in your grasp. This is the reality of gamma. In a sense, a gamma entity perceives all the sequences of beta's timeline simultaneously. This enhanced level of consciousness transcends the simple progression of moments, allowing for an all-encompassing observation of the entire film strip of time, even before that chronology is being played out. A profound question arises. What if you could access such a hypothetical dimension? Well, at this level, you don't just live through life moments. You would see each frame, each moment of time, as part of a larger cohesive picture, your progression as a human. The brilliance of gamma perception lies in your ability to dissect each frame, each data point, in an almost infinite number of ways. Want to gauge the intensity of emotions you experienced at a specific point in time? The graph has a variable for that. If you're interested in mapping your net worth progression throughout your life, there's a line that traces the ups and downs of your financial journey. Even the physical aspects of your existence can be quantified, like a variable for the number of wrinkles on your face at each point in your life. It seems that you follow a specific skincare routine during your teenage years, resulting in a significant reduction in the amount of wrinkles. Anyhow, it's about having the ability to view all the frames at once, essentially from a bird's eye view.
If you go to a higher dimension, it's not unrealistic to think that you step out of the time dimension and now you look at time as though we look at space. And you can jump in at any point, relive it. We don't know yet if you can interfere with events that, quote, have already happened. If your whole timeline is just already there, what does it mean to jump into it and then change something?
That's right. This does not mean that gamma can change the past or the future easily. For example, gamma perception would allow us to modify our skincare routine, perhaps reducing the number of wrinkles even more. And this shift would still exist within the bounds of our original timeline. But what if we yearn to see not just the film that our life currently is, but the myriad possibilities of what it could be? For that, we need to transcend further, into the realm of delta. Taking another leap up in these higher dimensions, we now venture into the world of delta, the plane of possible worlds. In this realm, perception goes beyond simply experiencing different possibilities. It involves visually seeing them all, the mesmerizing network of paths. While gamma can identify and respond to hiccups as they arise, delta already has the full spectrum of possibilities laid out before their very eyes. Consider this graph again. These so-called branching, which were dotted lines in gamma's perception, They become clearly tangible to delta. They sprawl out in every direction. Each decision, each potential sequence of events unfolds like a living tree. Every branch representing a unique outcome, a distinct narrative of our existence.
You might remember this scene from Avengers: Infinity War. We see Doctor Strange peers into the future to view all the potential outcomes of the battle with Thanos.
Forward in time, to view alternate futures, to see all the possible outcomes.
Let me make this clear for you. He wasn't merely predicting odds. He was actually seeing each potential outcome. All the 14 million different possible routes to a victory against Thanos. In our context, Doctor Strange was embodying the Delta level. Another fitting analogy for Delta's perspective might be that of a seasoned entrepreneur establishing a new business. These guys don't operate on guesswork or engage in trial and error, because they can implement a specific strategy for their circumstances and they know the exact steps to reach the desired target, their business target. That is the realm of Delta, a realm of absolute awareness. Here, the labyrinth of timelines and outcomes are visible, where the course of events across multiple timelines is not a mystery to be unfolded. We've been operating under a specific assumption all this time, that every path we've pondered upon originates from a common start, the origin point. This obviously represents a very special case. What if the initial conditions were slightly different? What if the genesis point of these numerous timelines was shifted ever so slightly? Does the labyrinth remain the same, as if it's being offset by a few pixels? In order to address this, we must venture into the world of Epsilon. According to chaos theory, even a small change in the initial conditions can lead to drastically different outcomes. The butterfly effect in all its unpredictable glory. The key here is initial conditions, the starting state from which everything else unfolds. In a simple system like a pendulum swinging back and forth, knowing the initial conditions can allow us to predict exactly what the system will do in the future. But that's not the case for complex systems. For instance, the double pendulum system, which adds a second pendulum at the end of the first. The interactions between these elements introduce a sensitivity to initial conditions. A tiny tweak will eventually lead to dramatically different outcomes. Think about the following cases. In the context of wrinkles on an individual's face, what if a child is born to different parents? Because in essence, this is a slight shift in the initial condition. A new combination of genetic material, and the child would have an entirely different genetic blueprint. As the child grows older, the pattern of wrinkles might be entirely different from what it would have been in the original timeline. Or what if we're looking at the business context, and we might wonder, what if a business had started 3 years earlier, perhaps before the pandemic hit? Or what if the starting capital had been different? These changes in initial conditions could dramatically alter the trajectory of the business. Perhaps you might be more familiar with this one, the fine-tuning of the universe. Take, for example, gravitational constant, the value that governs the force of gravity. If it were slightly stronger, matter would collapse together. If it were marginally weaker, stars might never form at all. Our universe would be a vast, cold, and lifeless expanse. Such is the potential power of chaos theory in this level. Hypothetical beings who could access the world of Epsilon possess an expansive control over their existence, thanks to their ability to perceive different initial conditions. These entities are capable of seeing their reality, all based on a different starting point. Instead of being tethered to a singular timeline, Epsilon beings can probe into the other initial points of existence. To those who can access this level, it represents an extraordinary freedom to explore, experiment, and experience a grand array of alternate realities. Just when you thought that our journey couldn't venture any further, we could, hypothetically, ascend into an even more profound level of existence. You see, what would happen if we could map out the vast plane of possible initial conditions, every conceivable one of them? All these different starting points of existence. And what if this tremendous matrix of alternate realities could be understood as a single, comprehensible stack? Welcome, as we venture into the world of Lambda. Advancing from the Epsilon level, we reach the realm of Lambda, or the plane of different initial conditions. Imagine each variation of initial conditions as a sheet of paper,
each representing a different reality that is underpinned by its unique starting point. The best part is that an entity capable of accessing this level would be able to see not just one or two, but the entire stack of papers all at once. A grand library of every possible beginnings and the paths to which they ultimately lead. Entities with the capacity to access the lambda level bear a resemblance to skilled puppeteers, orchestrating a cosmic theater of infinite possibilities. You might be asking, what's the significance? What are the manifestations of being able to wield this extraordinary breadth of power? Well, coming back to our business example, with Lambda's power, it's like having the unique insight to discern which business idea, with precisely how much initial capital, that will yield the optimal results. Or perhaps we delve into a more personal aspect. Imagine the possibility of being born to different parents, maybe in a different country or a different era. Since you have the complete knowledge of these databases of possible beginnings, you have the remarkable ability to pick one specific life path, that one plane that would result in the most peaceful life of yours. It's important to note that the chaos of different potentialities is still there, but Lambda entities can navigate through this chaos with purpose, with intentionality and precision. They'd know exactly how much capital investment to run that business, and they'd know precisely the parents from whom you should be born. They're not just seeing all possible futures from different beginnings, they're choosing the optimal one. A good illustration of the Lambda world is in the movie Mr. Nobody. Nemo is the last mortal human in a future Earth. He has the ability to recall his past in several possible and divergent timelines, each based on key initial decisions that lead to vastly different outcomes.
Every path is the right path.
Just like Nemo, a Lambda entity would be able to navigate through its possible existences, choosing the optimal set of initial conditions to live by. After all, higher dimensions confer an ability to make well-informed decisions about preferred paths. It's a transition from seeing the visual clues to utilizing these visual clues in pursuit of a certain goal. This level is about honing in on the ideal path, from a sea of probabilities of different beginnings. But is there more that we've missed? Are we done with our exploration of hyperspace? What if our neat stacks of paper aren't the whole picture? Welcome to the world of Sigma. We did leave out one crucial detail. You see, in all our previous discussions from alpha to lambda, we've always operated under one key assumption. Our laws of physics are eternally consistent. The metaphorical stack of paper was bound by the same set of rules, the same gravity, the same speed of light, the same cause and effect. Isn't that rather anthropocentric to view the cosmos in this way? So what if we did question the consistency of our laws of physics? What if in some far-flung corners of the hyperspace, different rules apply? Perhaps where the effects precede causes, or where time might not be linear. Or it could be where gravity might be a repelling force instead of an attracting one. And this is the gist of the Sigma level. The laws of physics are just another variable in the grand cosmic equation. We're not only changing how we view the branching of timelines or the initial conditions, we're changing the rule book itself, the different physical laws. Consider again the aging process we talked about. In our reality, aging is associated with physical changes. We're born young, grow older, and eventually pass away. But what if an alternate set of physical laws were to invert this process, such that you might be born old and pass away young? Or let's imagine a universe where time doesn't follow the rules we know. The movie Tenet delves into this concept. Some characters actually experience time in reverse. And in terms of broader cosmic phenomena, consider the laws that govern the behavior of the universe itself. For example, if gravity were too strong, galaxies, stars, and life as we know it couldn't exist. But perhaps in a different box, such a universe could thrive just fine under this extreme gravity.
It could be that other Big Bang events might have a different laws of physics in it. If you cross over from one universe to the other, and the charge on the electron is slightly different, all your atoms could just compress it.
Again, this brings us back to the concept of fine-tuning. Our universe appears to be fine-tuned for life, which means that small variations in the physical constants would make life as we know it impossible. But in the Sigma level, different values for these constants perhaps could give rise to viable universes. Realms with completely different physical laws, and perhaps distinct life forms. This really prompts us to question not just how things are, but how they could be under an entirely different set of physical laws.
Finally, the omega, the grand finale in our exploration of multidimensional realities. Entities in this level are privy to the existence of an infinite number of boxes, each with its own set of physical laws. Everything that can be imagined exists somewhere within this infinite array. The concept of impossible ceases to exist. You might find a reality where planets don't revolve around stars, or where colors are perceived as sounds, or even where the abstract concept of time doesn't exist. Every conceivable reality, every abstract concept that could ever be dreamt up, has its own place in this infinite expanse. Even realities beyond our wildest imaginations.
One of the consequences of this idea is over time, you produce patches of ever increasing variety so that every conceivable possibility that can occur will occur in some patch.
A hypothetical entity capable of accessing the omega dimension is not just playing the game. They are creating new games, new realities, and entirely new frameworks for existence. The concept of determinism might take on a new meaning in the omega dimension. With knowledge of all possible boxes, an omega entity might be able to determine the course of events not just in one universe, but in all of them. This is a level of understanding that goes beyond anything we, as alpha three-dimensional beings living in a four-dimensional world, can fully comprehend. As we wrap up this exploration of multidimensional existence, we're left pondering an existential question. Why do these boxes, these universes with their unique physical laws, exist in the first place? Who placed them there? Is there a grand designer, setting the parameters and observing the infinite possibilities playing out? It's important to remember that our perception of reality is shaped by the dimension in which we exist. The quest for understanding is a step towards higher levels of awareness, to see the bigger picture, to perceive beyond the boundaries of our current existence. And although the mysteries of our universe are vast and complex, our journey of understanding is what makes us inherently human. How does this understanding influence the perspective of your own life? Remember to keep exploring, because every experience in our lives adds a new meaning to our existence.